So before I start, let me give an introduction. I'm Silver, I mostly do art and stuff, but I like making video essays when I feel like it. And if you don't know Origins of Olympus, because let's face it, you probably don't, it's a Minecraft roleplay based off the Percy Jackson books. If you haven't read those, the premise is essentially the Greek and other gods of other mythologies are real, they have kids, and those kids hang out at summer camp. You put a bunch of people with god-sized issues in one place, what can go wrong? See, Brandine, the character I'm going to talk about, is probably my number one favorite from the series, which is kind of why I held off on making a video about him till now. Well, I wanted to wait till I had enough experience making this kinds of videos, and no, that first one does not count. It was but a test run. So, without further ado, let us begin with Season 1. I guess in the very start, there was also Jakey. Brandine and Jakey had one meal together and immediately hit it off. I bring this up because they actually become pretty close friends and probably have the most screen time together in Season 1. I feel like I should also mention that on multiple occasions, Brandine has mentioned that he used to live in the upper levels of the underworld. Actually, his opening sequence is literally him stepping out of a portal from there. Though I do find it a little funny how this is one of the few bits of information we get about his life before coming to camp. And then, Trial of Ares, a battle royale type competition. As the son of Ares, Brandine's pretty confident on his victory. But no, he doesn't win. I only mention it because I forgot to mention that Brandine is in fact a son of Ares. Now, Season 1 Brandine is very much described as edgy or even a little scary or standoffish, but he still agrees to help train Mario. No, not the plumber, which is one thing I like about his Season 1 character. He's a lot nicer than he initially comes off as. Even Xylo comments that despite being all edgy and whatnot, Brandine's actually a pretty nice guy. He's actually portrayed as being more introverted rather than mean as the series goes on. And again, I do like the dynamic between Mario, the book nerd, and Brandine, Mr. Did you know I killed a 20-foot-tall monster with my bare hands once? Also, his reaction to finding out Mario is a son of Zeus is genuinely golden, as if the episode being titled What It Is wasn't telling enough. But back to Jakey. I honestly really like the friendship between them in Season 1. By the middle of the season, you can tell how close they are. Jakey even calls Brandine his partner in crime, shortly after breaking camp rules together, so that might be literal. And I really do like how Brandine just tends to go along with Jakey's little schemes and shenanigans. My brother Mitch sucks. I deserve the trident, not him. I've never met Mitch before, but yeah, I agree. They even break into the Oracle together. Of course, Jakey just wants confirmation that he's the true owner of the trident, way because he feels it's his birthright as the older brother and son of Poseidon, but part way because of his own ego as well. Brandine decides that he wants to know the truth, whatever that is, and of course the Oracle gives him a cryptic answer though, because I guess that's what oracles do. I do love how Brandine comforts Jakey after Jakey gets the answer he doesn't like. I'd also like to mention while visiting the Oracle we find out Brandine is actually the younger son of Ares. Oh yeah, did I mention he had a brother? Because he does. The brother is named Seek. And yeah, based on how the Oracle greets Brandine, we can assume that Seek is actually the older one, even if not by much. And eventually, Jakey decides to challenge his brother, Mitch. Because, yeah, he still wants the trident, even though he was told by the Oracle that he isn't destined for it. And I like how both Poseidon brothers have their respective partners, Mitch has his roommate Xylo, and Jakey, of course, has his partner in crime, Brandine. Even when Xylo and Mitch need to find Jakey, literally the first person they go to is Brandine. If that doesn't show how close they are, I don't know what does. Look, I could talk about parallels between these two all day, because there are several things, even if some are unintentional. Despite starting in relatively similar situations, they end almost opposite to each other, with both not being the friendliest toward their respective brothers, and both having an important bit of information about themselves kept secret, even at the end of their respective arcs, after learning their respective truths. Jakey decides to forgive his brother, and Brandine really did not. But enough about Brandine and Jakey as a duo. Give me a second to talk about Brandine as a standalone. The purpose of this whole video. Over the course of the series, he starts having these cryptic visions in his dreams, like most demigods, which kinda leads him to wanting to learn more. He wants to know the truth, basically, which is exactly what he asks for from the Oracle, the magical all-knowing eyeball. The Oracle tells him, "Truth lies in the past," which is a pretty alright answer compared to what other people have gotten, but it still leads Brandine to more confusion. And I gotta say, all the gaps in his memories aren't helping, nor was getting poisoned. the mysterious doppelganger in his head wasn't helping too much either. So, back to how Brandine was poisoned. At the beginning of the series, the Oracle actually spat out some cryptic prophecy, then finished with saying, "Don't eat the coleslaw." I personally had canon that Brandine actually ate the coleslaw. Of course, since Brandine almost kinda died from this experience, he's just a little aggressive when it comes to the questioning, but it does end up with his brother Seek, who, quote, wanted to knock him down a few pegs, which is a little messed up to do to your own brother, and Brandine does end up getting his revenge. I'd also like to note the interactions between the brothers. They are quite funny, with Brandine's constant passive aggression and Seek just not catching on. Then Brandine also legit tells Jakey to write fanfics about Seek. Another note, early in the series, Seek says he's only met Brandine once or twice. I'm not sure if this is supposed to be a retcon or if it's supposed to set up Seek as a liar, because seeing as the two seemingly spent a childhood together, once or twice feels like a bit of an understatement. So, back to the Oracle's answer. The truth lies in the past. This mysterious doppelganger of himself shows up and seemingly knows more than he does about his past. I'm not really sure why I would trust this version of yourself, especially when said version has black scleras and a claw. Oh yeah, did I mention the Claw of Hades? Brandine actually acquired the thing after jumping into a volcano and surviving. This was also how he found out he was resistant to fire. And I think the claw was always a part of him. He just awakened it after the volcano thing. But you may be asking, why is the son of Ares in possession of the Claw of Hades? Good question, one that we'll get to later. So, back to that doppelganger. Following his instructions, Brandine summons a phoenix, which is supposedly the manifestation of his soul, and, he names it Red, with the help of... Oh, I didn't even mention David yet? David, to put it bluntly, is an annoying douchebag. I don't mean it in a I don't like the character kind of way. That is how the character is played. And you know what? It works. And I really do enjoy Brandine and David's dynamic as well. What with David's over-the-top nonsense paired with Brandine being more than done with it. Maybe it's time I discuss that truth Brandine was looking for. You know, the fact that he died. So it turns out when he was young, he encountered a Titan and got killed. Ares took his body down to Hades for help, and Hades kind of said the best he could do was put a demon soul in his body. But I guess he set up Brandine with the Claw of Hades as compensation. Hades also set the condition that Brandine really shouldn't know about this. Of course, his brother Seek found out eventually, so he too was sworn to secrecy. And I think it's also implied that this secrecy is what drove a wedge between the two brothers. After we learn this backstory, we also get to know the true identity of this doppelganger. He is none other than the demon soul that was placed inside his body. Brandine has a surprisingly nonchalant response, all things considered. He even tells his inner demon, "Well, I guess I just gotta accept you for what you are. A part of me." Sounds like a good answer? Wrong. This response triggers something that is described as their minds merging together. From my understanding, both the character we've been following and the doppelganger essentially cease to be, and instead become someone else. But because the demon part was, quote, more whole than the human part was at the time, the new version of them is more demon than human, rather than an even split. This is a really interesting take on the demon possession trope, especially since we got 2 other possession plot lines this season. I think Brandine's own manages to stand out in my opinion. Anyway, it's time I talk about Evil Brian. I say Evil Brian because Brian is not usually evil. See, he's actually one of the other possession plot lines from this season. Actually, now that I think about it, the other one was his sister. But moving on, Evil Brian actually wants to release the Titans. And if you don't know Greek mythology, Titans big bad powerful guys. Bad news, big calamity if they were released. Evil Brian noticed Brandine's personality shift and immediately asked him for help releasing the Titans. Brandine, who just found out he got killed by one, says, "Yeah, I'd love to find the one that killed me and give him a piece of my mind." Almost makes you wonder what his reaction was when he realized all the Titans had just been resealed when he wasn't looking. But Evil Brian wants a third person to help release the Titans, so Brandine goes and picks Jakey. It's actually kind of telling how Brandine's first choice is in fact him. But of course, like any sane person, Jakey kind of says, "What? The Titans? Are you crazy, bro?" Then they have a big falling out, which is quite sad, and Brandine settles for taking David instead. Of course, after setting the Titans free, Jakey gets stabbed yet again. But even after their falling out, Brandine does still value Jakey to some extent, which is why Brandine goes back to save Jakey from his death, even if in Season 2 he likes to play this moment off as, I had something to gain from it. I think we all know why he really did it. Also, did I mention Brandine absorbed his phoenix using the Claw of Hades? Because in doing so, he can now use the phoenix's abilities like fire manipulation, flight. I just want to say this is probably one of the most underutilized abilities in the whole series. Like, he can use the abilities of those he's absorbed. I'm not trying to imply that Brandine is one of the most slept-on characters in Origins of Olympus in terms of power scaling, but Brandine is one of the most slept-on characters in Origins of Olympus in terms of power scaling. I mean, he's already collected a teleportation ability and a few others by the time Season 2 comes. I know he probably gets beat out by a character like Seductive Rose in terms of raw power, but Brandine with the Claw of Hades easily has the better hack. Like, imagine a fully realized version of his ability. It could be the most random BS Go moveset ever. Anyways, here's a scene that really stuck out to me when I first watched it. Brian has been broken out of his possession, basically powerless to stop the Titans that he released. As a last attempt to fix it, he begs Brandine to help. Technically, he also begs to David as well, but I'm pretty sure Brian knew as well as any other that he had a better chance with Brandine. And when Brandine rejects, Brian has the balls to pull out a sword and do this.
If you're not gonna help me, then I'm gonna have to seize you.
Huh?
Really?
Like, bro was not just pleading to him a moment ago. And so, Brandine gives Brian an ultimatum to either try and stop him or go back to save the person he stabbed. There's something about this scene. Maybe it's Brian trying to appeal to a kindness Brandine may or may not still have. Maybe it's the fact that they're both completely different people compared to who they were at the start of the series, both in a very literal sense. Yeah, something about it just feels very thematic. But now it's time for the finale of Season 1. Brandine decides that he ought to settle the score with his brother once and for all. You know, for the lies, the poison, mostly the lies, I think. With all the power he's gained, Brandine wins low diff, and even drops this line.
We are brothers, but we are not equal. Remember that.
Absolute bars, man. Anyways, Brandine soon kills and absorbs his brother with the Claw of Hades, which concludes Season 1. In Season 2, Brandine actually takes a backseat in favor of being a more in-the-shadows scheming type of villain. Instead, we follow a character called Lychee, who is actually Brandine's apprentice that he took in during the one-year time skip between Seasons 1 and 2. Although this video isn't particularly centered on Lychee, I do appreciate that they took time to give him a very distinct personality and plot. But back to Brandine, I said he takes the role of a scheming villain this season, so what's his goal? Well, according to Lychee, he actually wants to destroy camp. Why? It's never really stated, which I find to be a little disappointing. Brandine is literally the only villain in Season 2 with a potential for an interesting motive. Like, Dranus and Set are primordial deities, so I guess they don't really need a motive. Seductive Rose is literally a magic sword, who just wants power and revenge. Momiji is hardly a villain, considering she's manipulated into it. For like 2 seconds, maybe. Of course, one theory/headcanon that I have is that destroying camp was never really his goal in the first place. The plan was always for Lychee to leave his side. A few lines lead me to this conclusion, but we can never really be sure. Although Brandine doesn't actually interact with that many characters in Season 2, I think the few presented dynamics are actually pretty solid. His interactions with David are funny as always, even more so considering his new role as a villain. It is indeed very humorous seeing Brandine so far at his wit's end. Even though Lychee is kinda just Brandine's spy in camp, Brandine and Lychee have a very father-son dynamic going on. Yeah, it's pretty cute, I vibe with it. I think it's quite funny how Lychee actually makes a few jabs at Brandine here and there. It's even funnier when you realize Brandine is usually scrying on him, which Lychee is partially aware of. But unfortunately, this is another thing I kinda wanted more of. Like, Brandine has quite a bit of history with most if not all of the returning campers in Season 2. I mean, yeah, we have an interaction between him and Xylo in the underworld, and Jakey's sweet little reunion, but it's a real shame we don't get to see the reaction of other campers. Like, Brian. Brian literally makes one comment in Season 2 saying, "He's dangerous, be careful." Like, come on, that's it? Or what about Mario's reaction? I mean, Brandine literally taught the guy how to hold a sword. Side notes, Brandine and Xylo's interaction is unironically kinda funny. Like, Brandine is just way too giddy to power scale everyone against the series' strongest. Okay, Xylo, I know you and the fandom think you're the strongest, but I'm gonna go down the list of people who I think could beat you in a fight. Number 1, I think at the very least Lychee would high diff you. I trained that kid, I would know. Number 2, Mario. Mario's pretty tough, I trained him too, you know. And Jakey, hey, that's why his power scaling. You're only saying that because you like him. Not done yet. Anyways, I think number 3, David would low diff you, Xylo. But I should probably also go over his business relations with the other main villains of the series. You know, people like the primordial deity of chaos, the manifestation of doom, evil magic sword, who all of which seem to respect Brandine to some extent, which is honestly a little funny to me, because based on the general age range of characters in Season 1, so Brandine is anywhere between 17 or 19 years old in Season 2. And not to mention him constantly getting donations in the form of dead bodies for him to reanimate will never not be funny to me. Speaking of reanimation, that's actually a pretty big thing he does this season. See, he actually set up shop in a temple in the middle of nowhere and has been filling it with a boatload of demon souls. Demon souls that are all very eager to take an uninhabited vessel. And in comes this fellow named Davis. He died. David came and thought, hey, my bestie would love a still warm corpse. And of course, the demon inhabiting Davis's body has his own agenda and plot, largely involving another one of Brandine's subordinates. Taki, I believe she's called. Taki actually inhabits a replica of somebody else's body. I believe it was specially requested by her too. And yeah, while brief, I do kinda enjoy Brandine's little interactions with his subordinates.
David, shut up. Taki, behave. I said wait.
And how can I forget the finale? It's honestly kind of perfect in my opinion. One last showdown between Lychee and Brandine, an event that's been built up to for a while at this point. Lychee's on the back foot, but with the spirit of the newfound friends he's fighting for, he manages to deliver a final blow, which completely contradicts Brandine's ideology of friends are just a burden that he's been spouting this season, which really goes to show how different the characters developed. And then Brandine gives one last smile as he fades into oblivion, but he is actually still alive. Remember what I said about him being able to utilize the abilities of the things he's absorbed, using his claw and all that? And remember when I mentioned he absorbed a phoenix? You can probably infer the rest. And so, at the very end of the season, it's revealed that he essentially faked his death at the cost of 3 feet of his height and a good chunk of his power. He does regain both in due time, though. But back to the finale, I really liked how Lychee reacts afterwards. Even after he made his choice, he's still unsure how to feel about Brandine, which is honestly an accurate reaction from a character like him. And judging from Brandine's choice of words during the finale, it's almost like he was expecting this outcome, especially with this line.
I knew you could do it. Lychee.
It does really seem like he just really wanted to fake his death. The fact that he calls David the most important part of his plan is also a big indicator of this. Because what does David do during the finale to warrant this? Well, nothing. But what does David do afterwards? Well, David is kind of Brandine's rich friend, which allows him a good safe place to stay while also recovering his power. Brandine also admits in his spin-off that he himself only thought he had a 70% chance or so of surviving that last hit from Lychee. See, one of my favorite parts of Brandine's character is his kindness. I know I said the Brandine from Season 1 essentially ceased to be, but aspects of his former self still shine through every once in a while. Like, despite being more demon than human, he still had enough kindness to go back and save the person he once considered his closest friend. Enough to admit killing his brother was hard on him. Enough to take a half-dead kid under his wing. Enough to smile when that same kid more than exceeded his expectations. Even Set comments on how evil Brandine actually is or wants to be. Although I think that there still could be more room for growth and development, I think Season 2 and the spin-off was a good place to leave it off for the character. And even though Brandine is likely still alive and kicking by the time Season 3 comes around, Season 3 of Origins of Olympus was discontinued, so we'll never know if he made an appearance or not. I mean, Lychee makes a few comments on Brandine, but nothing too major. Although from a writer's perspective, if you're gonna leave the complex villain with still undisclosed motives alive, you might as well use them. But again, who knows really? Now, on for the final part of this video where I discuss my final thoughts and add things I didn't really get a chance to talk about in the first halves. But before I do that, if you made it this far in the video, it means I've entertained you somewhat, so consider liking, maybe even subscribing. That'd mean a lot to me. Anyways, back on track. I'd like to talk about his design in Season 2. No complaints, I like it, 10 out of 10. But the white hair and the red jacket makes me think of Dante from Devil May Cry. Just a little. I'm not sure if that was intentional or not, though since Dante and Brandine have a lot to do with demons. But great detail, intentional or not. Oh, and speaking about the hair, although it's not really visible on the Minecraft skin, he is actually described as having long hair. I love that for him. Makes sense too. I don't think there are any hairdressers in the forest or the underworld. The outfit as well gives me much more of a wild feeling as opposed to a Season 1 appearance, which definitely gives off more of the vibes of a somewhat normal high schooler, if not one who's a little rebellious. Side note, I like the headcanon that Brandine keeps in contact with Jakey as a anonymous pen pal. I just want to hope that he wouldn't keep his old friend hanging. Also, we never really get anything on his mom. We only get this fellow, who is presumably like his babysitter. Unless he just has two dads, I mean, yeah, this is also a fair assumption. And even though I didn't talk about it too much in this video, I did really enjoy he and David's spin-off. Brandine and David's dynamic is on point as usual. I guess without the responsibility of being a main villain, Brandine acts a lot more like his season 1 self, if not a little more childish, although the 3 feet of height that he's missing is definitely not helping. And I do like the small implication that David, despite being a loud and talkative person, is actually a little lonely and just enjoys Brandine's company. The spin-off just barely didn't finish, but at least we had the script for how it would have ended. And based on David's comments in another character spin-off, sounds like Brandine's off doing his own thing. And yeah, like I mentioned earlier, there may or may not have been plans for him to return in season 3. Which is a bit of a shame it never came to pass. I would have enjoyed seeing Lychee's reaction to him being alive. That being said, I've also linked both of his seasons in the description if you care to watch it for yourself and you haven't already. I might do a video on Lychee in the future, but for now, that's all I have to say. Goodbye.
You burned my house to the ground! My family's dead! What do I do?